Hello and welcome to another edition of the Door 14 Hockey Podcast. I'm your host Marty alongside Dave
Hello.
and John.
Hello.
Hello, how are you both doing? John, how are you?
Good, mate. You?
John, I haven't seen you. I seen David in person last weekend for one of the preseason games, but I haven't seen you in person. How are you doing?
I'm good. I suppose this is the joy of another season of living in different countries.
Yeah, you missed out on all the fun at the SSE, unfortunately. But you get to see the Giants when they're playing away in Scotland. Well, as much as you can, I guess.
Here, do you know what? Start of a new season. Giants are starting their campaign here in Scotland. Am I going to see either game in Dundee or Fife? Absolutely not, because I'm going camping.
Oh, well, that's.
I was looking at the schedule. I don't think I'm going to see any Giants hockey at least until October.
Priorities. Dave, how are you doing? Obviously, I seen you at the weekend, but how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I had a great time. First match since an early end of the off season with the not going to playoffs and stuff. So yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed it. I had a really good time. It's going to be a really interesting year based on how the team's shaping up and from the little I've seen. But it was really good. It was really good night.
Yeah, it was good to be back. I was saying to friends of ours who were around us, who sit around us, I was saying to them, it was the longest gap I've ever had between the end of one season and the start of another season. So it's the longest gap because obviously my son was born in March and I wasn't there pretty much for the games in March. So there was a full month and a half extra that was like about a month and a half more than normal for the off season. So we're glad to see us back. And it was my first game bringing my son to the game this past weekend, and boys, you have been there. I mean, you both have kids. You have both been there for your kids' first games, and I'm sure he's going to test the feeling that you get when you bring that little one to the first ever game, and it's just something special about it. It's just brilliant. It was just such good.
So let alone we know that you will have loved it. You will have enjoyed it. How was the wee man at the game? How did he take it in his stride?
Yeah, he seemed to do well. He was there for he stayed for 2 periods anyway. He stayed for the first and second period, but he was starting to get a bit restless and tired kind of towards the end of the second. So his mum came and picked him up before the start of the third period. But we'll build up to a full game. And yeah, I think he was taking it all in. I think his favorite part was whenever the period ended and the lights went out around the arena and all of the colorful lights came on, and he was just like, "What is going on? Oh my god!" But he wasn't phased. He wasn't phased at all by the noise, the drums, nothing. He wasn't phased by any of that, which was fantastic.
I wanna ask you because obviously I've seen some online chatter about the light show in the SSE this season. I've seen for the improvements, let's call them, that were made last season. The blinding, strobing, incredibly bright lights. I've heard that it's been stepped up again. Is that right?
I don't know if I noticed any difference compared to normal.
I didn't really notice it in there either. Maybe it's just getting desensitized to the strobe. I actually thought it was not as bad as it was last season, but again, maybe just getting used to
it. Yeah, as you say, Dave, it was one of those we're so used to how bright the lights were in the last season that you're kind of just like, I think his initial shock to the system. But I suppose I came in, I did miss the intro and stuff this time around. So I didn't see the full entrance part. So I came in when the game was already started and the lights were already up. So maybe it's not as daunting, not as blinding when the lights come on, it always happens. But enough of that. Boys, we have a lot to talk about. We have the start of the new 2024-2025 season upon us this coming weekend. Literally, if you listen to this podcast as traditionally you do on a Friday, in just over 24 hours, the first pucks will drop in the Elite League. And we're all very excited about it, and we can't wait for to get underway. And with that said, we have a lot to talk about within that. A few announcements made this week by the Elite League in relation to penalties and roster regulations and a bunch of other things. So we'll definitely get into that. But before we do that, if you haven't already been on our TikTok account, we have our own influencer here in the room, John Ford, who's trying to become an influencer. He's very influential. And
So demure.
So demure.
Very, very mindful.
John, just before we do move on to
My
period,
Riz is on a different level, guys.
before we move on to period one, can we just talk about your lurking in the woods with a giant camera? I mean,
You think it was the woods? It was the neighbor's garden.
For anybody who hasn't seen the TikTok, there's a TikTok video that John put out where he kind of is talking about some of the changes to the league, and he's got his DSLR camera, and he's obviously in
Whoa.
some wooded area somewhere.
Mirrorless.
Okay, but anyway, he's in a some nameless woods somewhere. And I think the first comment that the first comment that someone made to me was, he does look like he's creeping. And I was like, he does look like he's creeping with the camera. But yeah, go on, have a look and see. I know some people really liked your video after that one with the dog, with the toy dog, which I cringed at.
Wait, it's a toy?
But no, keep going, John. It's pretty fun. If you haven't done so already, check out our TikTok. Go along there and see.
It's a bit of crack. And to be honest, hello to everyone who started following. We're over a couple of hundred now. It's come from nowhere. A couple of stupid little videos. It's amazing what you can do when you've just got the brass neck to do stuff like that. It's good crack. I enjoy it, and a few people seem to like it. So I'm happy pushing the podcast that way.
Yeah, so jump on that. Influential John can keep going there with the TikTok because it's pretty fun. Okay,
Marty. Let's just get it out of the way right now.
Okay.
There's a game on right now.
Is there?
There is. There's a game on right now. The Sheffield Steelers are in action in the CHL against Freiburg. So we're just putting out there just now. They're in the second period. We're a fair ways in to the game, let's be fair. You're not the biggest fan of my goal announcements. It's pretty fair to say that you're not a fan.
Correct.
Let's just be glad that we didn't start at around about 6:45 tonight, and we started at 8 o'clock, because the first period had no fewer than 6 goals. It's currently 3-3 in the second period. So, listen, I'm giving the people what they want. I've had a few messages direct to me. People are looking forward to the goal updates. So I know you messaged and said, could we hold back on it? Sorry, mate. Absolutely not.
I will say fair play to Sheffield. They're holding their own there, 3-3 at the end of the first.
Took the lead early on. Took the lead and actually went out to a 2-0 lead away as well, which is a great start to a CHL campaign. That's what any team wants to see. But they got pegged back. It went to 3-2. But at the end, close to the end of the first period, they've tied it up again. And so far, very quiet second period. So we'll just have to wait and see what the rest of the game brings as we're live here recording. Hopefully anyone who's downloaded this episode hasn't spoiled it ahead of time for themselves. So hopefully you're coming to this blank and don't know what happens as the game progresses.
Yes, we will come back to that throughout this episode, unfortunately. Okay, let's move on to period one and get stuck into all things UK hockey. Okay, period one is a roundup of stories from around the UK here in the Elite League and further afield. John, you got in there before I did with a lot of the stories for this week. So if you want to introduce them, by all means, but I'm happy to kind of run through them as well. But let's start, shall we, with the roster regulations for 2024-2025, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's go with it. So again, this news will have broken a few days ago. Anyone who's following our TikTok will know that I kind of spoke a little bit about this in one of the TikTok videos. I believe it was the dog one. So if you want the hottest, freshest news out of the Elite League and hockey globally, get on our TikTok channel. So this was the news out of the Elite League. It was really the first sort of real league news that we'd had this entire season, which is unusual because normally there's been a complete hissy fit before the pucks even hit the ice. But actually, they managed to get through preseason without anything going absolutely mental so far. Couple of changes to rosters. The 10 teams have agreed that the maximum number of players that a team can use in a single season is being reduced to 25. That was 29 in previous seasons. This does, however, exclude injury replacements. And for this season, most significantly, will not include two-way players. Now, there's a caveat on that. Two-way players will not be counted until they hit 20 games played for their Elite League team. So, if they hit the 20, then they then count towards the maximum overall roster. Another caveat within that then is that the Challenge Cup group stage games are not included. So, yet another point out that the Challenge Cup is meaningless and this competition needs to be shifted completely when the Elite League don't even think that those games count towards roster regulations. Another quick change that's been made is the injury reserve list for 2024-25 is now being set at 90 days. That replaces the previous 28-day period. So essentially, a player that goes onto the injury reserve list will not be eligible to ice again for 90 days. So essentially, that's forcing a team to either make a replacement and keep that injured player off the ice. Doesn't matter if they need a week off or they need 3 months off, but they'll have to sit off for 90 days to count on the injury reserve list to bring in an additional player. The player placed in injury reserve list, as I said, can be replaced without the overall roster going up within the 90 days. But again, I think if they choose to hold on to the replacement, that then counts towards their overall roster. And additionally, and this to me was one of the biggest things, and I know that on A View from the Bridge this week there was a lot of chat about British netminders with Mark Lefebvre of Dundee, but additionally, teams must have at least one British goaltender registered to their overall roster in order to facilitate 14 non-homegrown skaters, so imports. So if they want the full number of imports, they have to have at least one British goalie on their roster. Doesn't matter if they ice or not, they have to be on the roster. So, a few different things to pick apart there, guys. Marty, first things first, the overall roster is dropping down to 25. Why do you think they've done that? Is it a reaction to a lack of depth in the Brits, or is it to try and bring parity to the league?
I think it's the second. I think it's a bit of parity. I think part of it would be some of the 10 Elite League teams maybe struggling to match the bigger teams. So I'm talking about maybe our teams who maybe have a bit more of a budget that's a bit more restricted. So like our Fifes or Dundees, maybe not Glasgow as much, but those types of areas. I'm thinking possibly that's maybe what's happened there, and they've brought down to 25 players. I don't know. It's an interesting one because we've seen in previous seasons that the Giants, even like let's not like pussyfoot around it. The Giants have utilized the fact that they've been able to bring in a higher number of players, the 29 players. The Giants have utilized that the last couple of years. Jokes galore across the league from fans across the league about how the Giants will bring in, throughout the season, like how many players do they have now type thing. And we've seen that with Sheffield this year. We've looked at their roster. We talked about that last week, how their roster looked like it was they're running 5 lines almost. Yeah, it's an interesting decision to reduce down to 25 players, and I think it is just as a kind of thing to make it a bit more even across the whole entire league.
Dave, any thoughts on that, or do you want to have a comment instead on the two ways, which is quite interesting?
Yeah,
I think not counting until they hit 20.
I do think that them two elements go hand in hand. Not necessarily with everybody else, but when you take Sheffield and the current scenario they have with the Steel Dogs, they're obviously going to rely on that two-way quite a bit this season. And they didn't want to. They wanted to be able to use as many of those players as they could in a rotational basis. They didn't want to have to sign all those. But I think for the Giants, for the league, they accept that they had to bring the overall down. They couldn't have both. They couldn't have this revolving door of the Steelers trying out different Brits to see who works from the Steel Dogs. and still have a really big, bench size on top of that. So I think it's getting that balance. The thing that one thing I was wondering was the netminder question. You have to have a single British netminder signed, a minimum of one. Is that active roster, as in on a game night, or is that just in general on your roster?
No, that's maximum signed players.
So it's
So
not
like
on
you
the
think
game night.
about
You
you
still
think about
could do two.
if most teams were playing three and a half line hockey, they're still only icing what 3, 6, 9, 12, 19, 19, 20 players roughly. So the 20, 25 and 29 numbers are the overall signings for the entire season.
What I would love to see the Elite League do, which is, I don't know if it's still the same in Germany, but it used to be, where it wasn't just your team that was signed; it was your active roster on the night that was determined on your imports. You had to ice so many locally trained players or German nationals to be allowed to have your maximum number of imports. And I sort of would like to see more of the British netminders getting ice time. It sounds really bad, but we're hurtling towards Ben Bounds coming to the end of his playing career. Jackson Whistle's waiting in the wings, and we have your man, the third netminder, for his name's cleaned last week. But there's not a wealth of British netminders taking those places, especially in the Elite League. And I think that there really should be some sort of governance. I know that everyone will come at me going, it's not a development league, blah, blah, blah. But I do think that there needs to be some sort of exposure to British netminders to this level of hockey or above.
Well, on that, then you've got the additional roster requirement that to field a full number of imports, every Elite League team is going to have a British netminder on the roster. Now, for the vast majority of teams, that's really not going to be a problem. Like you mentioned, you've got Belfast and you've got Cardiff who are icing the two best Brits in the netminder position in their rosters. In fact, they're either starters or they're 1A, essentially. Jackson Whistle is absolutely capable of being a starting netminder. Most of the, I don't want to call them lower positioned teams in the league, are pretty heavily reliant on their backup GB netminders. But we are starting to see a lot of a shift in a lot of teams, like Dundee, for example, running a dual import netminding situation. Now, watching Mark Lefebvre's interview on AVFTB this week, it was really interesting. He pointed out what we talked about in the last podcast, the banner signing of Ben O'Connor as being the main reason that he's been able to go deep into the import market for two import starting netminders. So by the Elite League putting in the GB netminder requirement, is it to avoid a vacuum of GB netminders, or is it just paying lip service to the problem? Marty?
I think it's... sorry.
No, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
To me, it feels like they're trying something without making it mandatory. Everyone will have, at least expect everyone to have a British trained netminder on their overall roster somewhere, because even for proper training camps, you need more than the two, but I do think that at some stage they're going to need to go further, but we won't see that, I think, for a while, because the Elite League at the minute it doesn't like to over govern. At least that's the way it feels anyway. But it'll be really interesting because it's like a step in the right direction. But we'll see what the rest of the league makes of it. What I would love to see, and we talk about the fact that the Challenge Cup is garbage and rubbish, but in my opinion, we should be starting the season with the Challenge Cup, and it should be a way for us to get younger, hungry players out on the ice against other teams. Having our Brit netminders in the nets and having more of our two-way contracts on the ice at a level that will actually benefit them, rather than sometimes just fill an injury cover whenever, like what will happen with the Giants. Two ways, it'll be the Road Warriors. It'll be when we get a few knocks and we're having to pull up people on a weekday whenever we don't want someone to travel, say a chance of a concussion or something. But if we had a tournament where they could play for something and have the opportunity to be part of a team that lifts silverware, I think that would do wonders for the UK hockey and do wonders for GB.
Mm-hmm.
Marty, any extra comment?
No, just on the two-way thing. Just obviously, I don't know if it was mentioned because I had to quickly jump off there for a second. But the two-way, just coming back to the two-way contract thing, and about obviously the fact that this is about the 20 league games with the two-way players before they become registered as part of the overall roster size. And I know we talked about Sheffield and obviously their unique role, their unique position that they're in at the moment with the Steel Dogs and having that part and parcel of it. There is that risk, obviously. Then, if you do kind of see where the, if you come towards the, the season where people, GMs and the coaches are going to have to really think about, how they're strategically using those two ways. Because, if we think about, if something did happen, where we hit that 24 player mark, say we're sitting on 24 players signed and we've only got one space left, and God forbid, touch wood, there's not, but there's an injury that means that one of our two-way players ends up playing 20 games or whatever it is, and then then you're kind of scuppered because then you've hit your 25 players, and actually what happens if you actually need to replace, I know the injury cover says 90 days or whatever, but I mean there's whole list of things about how they have to think about how they're going to reuse those two-way players. The only thing I'll say about two-way players, I just want to make a note, is from this past weekend, from the preseason games this past weekend. Max Stewart this past weekend as a two-way player was phenomenal for the Belfast Giants. Now people will say, oh, but just it was kind of an easy, they weren't really challenging games, blah 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 blah. I would argue against that. Sunday was a good challenge. Sunday was a good game. They gave it their all. But Mac was impressive. Max Stewart was impressive, and I could see him grabbing a few more games.
Forget, Max Stewart scored the season opening goal.
He did.
Mm-hmm.
He scored the first Taylor goal of the season. So let's not take that away from him. Yes, we were missing a few Brits to Olympic action, but the imports were all there.
Yeah.
Everyone else is still, with the exception of one or two who have some knocks from previous games. But Max Stewart proved his worth, proved why he's got a two-way contract, proved why he's got a contract in the National League, and was producing against guys who are going through hockey college.
Yep.
Like, that's absolutely incredible.
And he was playing every step of the way with those guys. They're born and bred. There's hockey in their blood. I know there is with him too, but he deserved to be there every inch of the way. It wasn't one of these lip service Brits getting thrown onto the ice to hopefully get a goal. He was playing his shift and he was in their face, and he done a load of work in the slot. Like, he was harassing the goaltenders, in the right in front of the goalie, blocking shots or blocking the sight lines, and he was doing a fantastic job.
Yeah.
And I think that the National League is going to really see him, hopefully step up and see really big things from him.
Yep. Guys, let's move on to our next story, and this is another change this upcoming season that the Elite League put out just last week, and that is the video review of major penalties in 2024-2025. John, I don't want to stay away from you because I know you put the story up as well, so if you want to kick us off on this one as well.
Yeah, sure, I'll kick us off. Just before we do anything, Marty, score update. End of the second, still tied 3-3. So all to play for the Steelers going into the third period. Right, video review. So the Elite League has said that they're going to adopt the EIHL rulebook section related to video reviews of major penalties. Now, that's any major penalty, with the exception of fighting. The video review will be instigated by the on-ice officials. There is no option with this for a coach's challenge. So this is only on the opinion of the officials on the ice whether they think they need a video review of a major penalty. Now, what can they do once they've reviewed that? They can confirm the original major penalty, they can downgrade that penalty, or they can scrub the penalty completely. So, interesting there. We've got referees who might make a decision. We've got the 2-man system now, so maybe one of the other referees says, hang on, we need to have another look at this. I don't think you've got that right from 100 feet away. So they go and review this. The other one then is a double minor for high sticking. This will also be video reviewable, again, by the decision of the officials on the ice. This is not a coach's challenge. And again, the two main options here are to either confirm the double minor or to remove the penalty altogether. Now, that second one to me is the more interesting one. Because that double minor, that 2+2, where do you get that? That's blood.
It's blood, yeah.
So now, the onus is on the referees to be 100% sure that a player hasn't found some blood somewhere or thinks their opponent's getting a high sticking penalty and ends up biting their lip or biting their tongue to try and get the blood. That seems to me what this is doing, is removing that potential... I'm not even going to say gamesmanship, I'm going to say cheating, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Is to get rid of that out of the game. I'm very, very happy to see the video review of major penalties, because I think too many times, especially in the Elite League, we've seen major penalties called that should never have been major penalties. We've also seen some that probably should have been, but from the sound of it, this doesn't look like we're gonna get that. It has to be called a major before they can review it. So my question to you guys is, do we see more major penalties called and go into video review? And my second question on this is this going to be fair in all 10 arenas and rinks across the league? Marty, come to you first on the first question. Are we going to see more major penalties?
I don't know if we are. I genuinely don't. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to mean that there's going to be an influx of more major penalties than what there previously has been. I don't think that's going to be necessarily what we're going to see here. The fact that we do have like a means to kind of, almost contest them themselves in terms of looking to see, did they get it right, did they not get it right, and obviously it has to be done on the night. I suppose that's a nice thing to have in place, but that I know you're probably going to pass this question on the day of next, but I was just going to quickly make a comment about you were saying there about across the league and across the arenas. I mean, is the infrastructure actually in place that would allow for quality enough video to show those penalties right across the whole entire league? I mean, if we watch the webcasts alone, I mean, sometimes the webcasts are kind of hard to kind of catch. They're going to be basing their reviews on some dodgy footage from up in the rafters in Dundee, or those types of camera angles, or Guildford's is fair enough to have it now, but it's
well, you can't say Dundee, because they're still, I think, either one of the only or one of only one or two teams who actually record and stream their stuff in 4K.
Okay, fair enough. We'll go with Guildford then. But that's I'm kind of wondering is if the infrastructure there that would allow for these penalties to be reviewed accurately enough.
I think you're 100% right, because how long have we had goal line technology that's supposed to have been in the Elite League? But constantly we see rinks, and I'm going to say rinks here because it is the rinks, who end up with it not working. Or, to be honest, is it even there? Have they even bothered to put it in? But the league hasn't forced the hand. There hasn't been fines. There hasn't been repercussions for not rolling out what they're supposed to have. So now that we're relying even more for parity in the game on cameras and camera angles, are the league eventually going to start telling teams, look, if you want to be an Elite League team, here's the minimum standards? They did it years ago to Fife with minimum standards on Plexi to even join the league, let alone what happened in Fife down the line when they put their little strip of Plexi in, as they were told to, because the Elite League has no teeth. But yeah, Dave, like Marty said it, is that going to be the problem here?
I can't see all the teams having... The problem we have is that, like, the Giants webcast is pretty good. It's does the job, but it's a single angle. We don't have the other side. So if you're down by the boards, on the north, don't remember, one of the sides anyway, the penalty box side, you don't really see, even in the on the webcast, you can obviously see the heads and stuff, but Anything major, it's
but
still difficult.
the goal cameras, which admittedly are like GoPros, but they point down the ice.
I thought
And
they
we've
only looked
seen those in
straight down.
highlights, and they're available. We've got the goal line stuff, which is up in the rafters, and then there's the cameras above the score judges box.
Mm-hmm.
There's those. They're streamable because I have obviously over the last couple of seasons watched more of the webcasts, and they can stream those straight
Yeah,
through
so it'll be
to live on the webcast. So I imagine somewhere like Belfast, like I don't think there's a blind spot on the rink. The issue might be about how far away it is, and that's if it's
yeah.
something that happens over at the penalty boxes, maybe the clarity's not there. But my
But yeah,
biggest
I
thing
think
is that if we're relying on the tech, then surely there has to be a minimum standard. They've got
yeah,
to say
but that's
you've got to be recording this in 1080p at least.
yeah. Even when
And
you
look,
take in
is there any excuse when you can have a modern iPad and how many phones can an iPad now work like on
that's crazy
multicam?
now, yeah.
Like that's going to be the new Guildford webcast. Is going to be 4 guys running around with iPhones and one guy mixing it all on an iPad.
Well, yeah. But that's the big thing is that it's not good. Like even taking, I'm just taking the Giants as an example. If a team with that level of tech and resources put into it don't have 100% coverage, then what's the chances of the rest of the league also having it? You know, it's a massive investment. But it's the it'd be interesting to see what comes out of it. I do also think that when a review is done, that the footage should be provided as part of the highlight reel. So we know what they reviewed and know what they said. I think that's that should be the next thing to come along. Same way as we do in the NHL.
Yeah, I still stand by the fact that the NHL have their arrest mic'd up. I think we should be having that too. Hopefully that will come in the future. Who knows? Guys, I think that's it for that story. John, I think you have one more piece to cover in this period before we move on to our penalty box.
Yeah, I want to throw this out there because I, for how many seasons now, have said I'm going to try and get my head around the National League. And I'll be totally honest, there is no better place to start than Anthony and Banners on the Wall. He has an in-depth knowledge not just of the game in general, but the National League itself. He knows the bones of that league, and it's really, really incredible to see the depth of knowledge that he has. Very, very glad that he's been given the opportunity to do some commentary last season, and it looks to be going forward this season as well with Guildford. So that's fantastic to see. He put out his national division prediction, or not predictions, like pre-season thoughts, essentially. Well, actually, no, it is predictions because he kind of goes through who he thinks the front runners are. I've learned more about the 11 teams in that league with half an hour sat reading his blog post than I think I've ever known. Admittedly, I did know a little bit about Milton Keynes, mostly from their time in the Elite League. It's still sad to see them not up with us in the Elite. They've probably got some of the best travelling away fans I think we've ever met. I don't think we've met a bad one yet. But it was really interesting getting his insight into the likes of Leeds. So Leeds is a team that, like we spoke about, the Leeds Knights coming into being, and all the potential thoughts of were they going to be an elite league expansion team? Was it a couple of years in the national and then moving up to elite? So it's a team that's been on my radar, but I haven't really spent a lot of time looking at kind of who's playing for them, what the results have been, where they're positioned. Getting an in-depth look at their roster, their summer changes, the way that their season went last year, and that's the same the whole way through. I think it's fair to say we've only got 10 teams in this league, and we probably know one or two reasonably well. In fact, I'll be totally honest, you could put the entire roster of the Giants up in front of me right now and give me all the name tags for them, and I'd probably get about 4 or 5. So we're that early doors. But when you talk about the sort of people and the sort of changes that are happening in the National League, Anthony knows these guys, he knows their game, and it's just a fantastic piece of writing. Really interesting to see his insight into Solway. That's another team that I was really, really interested in when I heard that they were heading to the National. Obviously, being the only Scottish team, the only team north of Hadrian's Wall that are competing in the National League. Really, really cool. I know he had a great time there last season. Interesting. I hadn't even heard anything really, mostly because I probably wasn't paying attention. But Peaks stepping off the ice again, having never really intended to step on the ice in the first place, ended up being a pivotal member for Solway, stepping back off the ice again, and I believe is now, at least he's out of the ownership circle. There's a single owner now in Solway. So really, really interesting. All I can say is, if you've even got just the most passing interest in the National League, go and read that blog on the ins and outs of how that league might look start season and where things might lie. It's a fantastic piece of writing. Well done, Anthony.
Yep, it's a great piece, as you say. I had to read it myself there over lunch today, and yeah, fantastically put together piece as always. He always schools us when he comes on, and in the background, he's always throwing in his comments and schooling us as we go along. So we always appreciate that.
Do you know appreciate that. The other thing I'm going to give him is I didn't get the chance to watch it live, but I watched back A View from the Bridge from this week, and Anthony stuck his oar in really, really well during the discussions that Paddy and Davey and Simon were having with Mark Lefebvre, very specifically about British netminders. And sort of the question was asked of Mark Lefebvre why he's gone with the dual import setup in Dundee this season. And like I said, he used the signing of Ben O'Connor to say that gives us the opportunity. We've got that extra depth Brit, and that frees us up with the import slots. But Anthony did put the question in the chat, and Paddy and Davey, fair play to them, both sort of put that question to Mark as like, who's going to be the person to give these next British netminders? There's a few of them ready, and Anthony had the names ready to rattle off. He's like, who's going to be the elite league coach to give these guys the chance the same way that Ben Bounds was given the chance, the same way that Jackson Whistle's been given the chance? Who's going to take the chance on that next British netminder and secure the future of British netminding? Because right now there's only two teams. They're leaning on the veterans, and eventually, Dave, you said it at the start of the episode, these guys are going to go. So if it's not going to be the likes of, all credit to them, but if it's not going to be the likes of Dundee and Fife and Manchester, now Manchester are doing a good job with their academy anyway, the guys that are coming through there, but if it's not going to be these teams, who's going to do it? And with the pull now to the National League, are we at risk of a Super League coming back? I think it's a very, very strong likelihood, but I want to give him his due. Anthony stuck the oar and he asked the question, and fair play to Mark Lefebvre. Doesn't answer my emails, but he certainly had a go at answering Anthony's questions on A View from the Bridge.
You still need to drive up and just sit on his doorstep until he answers them, you know.
I'm gonna go make some tongue-in-cheek TikToks outside the rink.
Standing knocking on the door.
But yes, as I was saying,
just giving me an idea.
As I was saying, we always appreciate Anthony coming on and giving us his thoughts and his comments, and hopefully we'll get him on in person again. We always enjoy getting him on at least once, twice in the season and have a quick chat. So hopefully we'll get that done at the start of the season. I'm sure you'll come back and say I'd be happy to do that, but fingers crossed. Guys, that is it for period one. John, before I head into the next part, is there any update in the scores before?
No, it's still period break.
Great. Okay.
Oh no, sorry. It has just started. I have just had a notification through that the period has started, and
wow,
Freiburg have just scored in the first minute of the third period. It is Freiburg 4, the Sheffield Steelers 3.
Why? You know what? I created this monster. It's my own fault. I gave John access to admin rights within StreamYard. I let him sign in with my account. I went today to try and see if I could sign myself out of all browsers right across the whole entire whatever browsers I'm logged into. That's not something I can do. I was trying to log him out. So obviously you added on a goal horn, John. Fair enough. Was not expecting that whatsoever. Okay, let's move on to our penalty box segment for period 1. Okay, our penalty box segment is stories, obviously, of interest in relation to bans and hits and that sort of thing. And obviously, there was one big, massive story this week that is doing the rounds of a 4-year suspension coming from a ex-player of Glasgow. John, do you want to kick us off on this?
Yeah, so this news broke this week that Kevin Linskog, the former Glasgow Clan netminder, was recently banned there for 4 years as a result of a positive metabolite test indicating the presence of cocaine. Famously, the not performance enhancing drug in the eyes of the National Hockey League. This is the most interesting part though. This test was taken on February the 25th after the Glasgow Clan's game against the Dundee Stars. Now, let's put this in a little bit of context. Kevin Linskog was signed by the Glasgow Clan partway through that season. In fact, just a few weeks previous to this, on the 2nd of February. Kevin Linskog was then released by the Glasgow Clan on the 28th of February, 3 days after having provided this sample. Guys, discuss the potential connections.
I mean, I love that it was a comment underneath that someone said 4 years has had harsh for a bit of sniff. Yeah, I mean, what is there to say about this? It was, as you say, it's interesting that it was obviously the metabolite. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah,
Metabolite. Yep.
Metabolite. Cocaine, obviously, and as you say, we've had this story before. We've had cocaine mentioned. Obviously, we don't want to get ourselves liable here. We don't want to say anything against anyone or say anything out that
we haven't said anything that's not in releases that are out there.
Exactly. And I know
everything we say is our opinion and is not to be taken as fact. Or
and I know we commented, I think, on a previous player in the Elite League who was maybe involved with a bit of drug use in terms of maybe cocaine or something similar. And I know there's a few people said to us we should be really watching what we're saying, but this one's clearly out there. Obviously, it's fine. He's been violated the anti-doping rules. 4 years. Does it seem harsh for I don't know.
I mean, I get the argument that some people have made that does he deserve to lose the sport? And realistically, given the fact that he is 32, so he's going to be 36 going 37 if he doesn't sign halfway through the season before he's eligible to return to the game. I mean, that is harsh, especially when I've said it tongue-in-cheek, but to be totally honest, the National Hockey League and several leagues, in fact, across the game, do not consider cocaine to be a performance-enhancing drug. And, I mean, what happens? Players go into the player support program. They maybe get a couple of games away to go and talk through their substance abuse problems. I'm not belittling substance abuse problems here at all. What I'm trying to point out is, does Kevin Linskog deserve to lose the game for 4 years? I'm not entirely convinced he does.
Yeah, I guess, as you said there, John, it's not performance enhancing. He didn't get any kind of upper hand in his game from anything that he was taking. And I'm not just a fan, obviously, but
no, he couldn't feel his face. He's a netminder. It was brilliant for him.
Oh dear. Yeah, I mean, what is, it's quite interesting that he came in and then literally was in days.
I would love to have been the guy in Glasgow that realized, obviously they knew, they found out and they went, holy moly, we need to get rid of this guy. I wonder what he was doing when they went, you're coked up to the eyeballs, man.
No, I would assume that maybe this is just a result of the test having come back early stages as positive, and the team understanding that. Now, you can go back if you want to look at the signing announcement on X from when it was made back in February, and it would not be unfair or untrue to point out that there are several comments in there that you can read between the lines to suggest that there is a reason he left Fife very quickly, why he maybe left Poland very quickly in the same season. So obviously, Kevin had something going on, and clearly that led to substance and substance abuse. So maybe there were warning signs there. Should Fife and Glasgow have maybe looked a little bit harder in that signing? Maybe they should have. But
maybe
it all boils
could they have
down
looked
to
a
the
wee bit
fact
harder? Maybe getting him help might have been the big one.
Well,
maybe there's
maybe.
That's the thing. Yes, we can. It makes for an interesting story, and people do poke a bit of fun. But at the end of the day, this guy's he's gonna probably lost his career. And was there an opportunity for one of these teams to maybe step in earlier and get him the assistance he needed? Never know. Flip side of that, was he in the right mind space to even accept it?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think the biggest takeaway that we can have, we've had a laugh here, we've looked at the situation, and I think we've all agreed that we think the 4-year ban is a bit excessive, but like you said, in amongst everything else, there is Kevin here, and we hope that Kevin gets the help that he needs.
Yeah. I mean, there is that argument, obviously, that and I think this is something that the NHL talks about as well, about how even if it's not a performance enhancing thing, these professional athletes are role models at the end of the day for very young kids. They're role models. The kids come out to these games. It's family sport. I know people hate that phrase, but it is. And there is an aspect of you're a role model, and therefore you should be thinking about the impact that you're having with the things that you do off ice as well as on ice. And I suppose part of it could be that, but as you say, rather than this hefty 4-year ban where this guy's career is pretty much ended, should have been some help given as well at the same time. I don't know maybe why there hasn't been, but yeah, it is what it is. Guys, that is it for Penalty Box. We will obviously be bringing Penalty Box back throughout this season. Hopefully not too much, but we always enjoy when Dops puts something out.
Bring on Elite League Dops. Let's be having you.
We can't wait. I'm sure we'll be seeing some Penalty Box, the Penalty Box segment again in our next episode in 2 weeks' time, because I'm sure there'll be something in the first 2-3 weeks of the season, and then it'll go deathly quiet again, where Dops disappears off the face of the planet.
Oh, it'll be something. It'll be something brutal. Somebody will wear their jersey wrong and get 35 games.
Yeah, exactly.
And then someone will get 2 games for throwing a skate at someone.
Okay. I'll round off Penalty Box and we'll move on to our period 2 of hockey.
And we're back for the first time this season and have a period 2 and have some information on it. We're going to go stay close to home first, and then we're going to end on a bit of a somber note. So, John, do you want to talk about GB's Olympic chances or lack thereof? Can you hear him, or am I?
No, I can't hear him. I think he's turned his mic off.
Muted. Sorry, I was coughing earlier on, and I was doing the right thing and muted it, and totally forgot that I'd muted the mic. Anyway, we talked last podcast about the preparations and the warm ups for Team GB heading to the Winter Olympic qualifiers, and lo and behold, they failed. 1 win out of 2 was not enough to see GB through to the Winter Olympics in 2026. Guys, there's been a lot of discussion about Team GB, about the preparation, the fact that they played the Belfast Giants and the Cardiff Devils. They played no international games in the run-up to the Olympic qualifiers. And to be totally honest, take away the World Championships, the gold medals that they've won there. Those were probably the 3 biggest games in at least a decade for Team GB. And the first game, it was close, but then they lost it, and that was really the game that had to be won. The game against Japan was neither here nor there, but everyone pretty much knew that was a Team GB win to take away. They needed that second win to be in with a chance, and it didn't come. A lot of people are asking big questions. We talked earlier about British netminding being on the precipice. British depth at the top end of the home National League is on a precipice as well, with the reduction in GB fielded players or homegrown players that have to be represented on a game night sheet. Is Team GB, has it reached its prime? Are we now on the downward slope again? Are we expected to move down into the doldrums again before coming back another 60 years down the line to try and have another crack at the Olympics?
I'm going to kick us off on this. Because I had my thoughts about this, and I was wondering, what was the difference? Like, what is the major difference? Is it that they were playing teams that were just outclassed them and just were completely a step above? I generally don't think that's the case. I personally looked at kind of like, when have Team GB historically always played like the World Championships or those types of things, and it's always towards the end of the season. GB players have had a full season to get their ring rust off, have had a full season to kind of, get some ice time, make sure they're all warmed up, ready and willing to go for the Team GB, training camps and all that sort of things. And I just feel like, was it the wrong time? Was it the timing of part? And I'm not trying to justify it, but I'm just thinking, what is the difference this time around? And the only thing I can think of is the timing of when it was placed. We're sitting here at the start. It was, this competition was at the start of, even before the season kicked off. We had GB players who historically will probably have some part-time jobs. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'd say quite a few of them will probably have some part-time jobs in the off season. And I'm just thinking, how many of them have had the chance to have that, proper game experience, have that fast pace going. I mean, I'm sure I know they had training camp, and they had those 2 games against Cardiff and Belfast in Cardiff. Was it enough?
let's talk about those games first and foremost. GB didn't win. The national team didn't win a game against 2 domestic opponents. The Giants beat them 4-1. The Cardiff Devils shut them out 5-0.
Yeah.
I mean, let alone the national setup has a part-time coach, a part-time set of staff. I think there's probably, 1 or 2 full-time staff that are part of that setup. Is that enough?
Yeah, in my opinion, there's a massive lack of. There has been, and there. I don't know if that is ever going to change. There's been a fundamental lack of funding for GB ice hockey, for ice hockey in general, but GB in itself. This year was our best chance in like 10 years to get to the Olympics.
But you talk about the chronic lack of funding. What better opportunity is there to showcase? The team couldn't get the recognition for the back-to-back gold medals in the World Championships.
Yeah.
They were never even mentioned at Sports Personality of the Year Awards as team. The coaching staff were given nothing. The players were given nothing. They weren't even nominated. So, do you take that and just be pissed off that you don't get the recognition, or do you use it to push you on? 3 games to get to an Olympics, to get on TV, to get the money, to get the recognition.
I still don't think that they
maybe
would
have an
get the money
earlier
in my
training
opinion.
camp. Maybe have an earlier training camp. Find the
I know, but-
resource somewhere to do it.
But somebody has to fund it. And at the minute, there's no private equity that's going to pump up that money. The elite league, their margins aren't going to be enough to be able to sponsor an additional training camp on top of their own training camp.
let's not put it on the elite league. Like Marty used the phrase earlier on that we've heard a lot of the times. The Elite League's not a development league. It's not a Team
That's what I
GB
mean,
farm system.
But they're
not going to have anything to do with it.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. But there's nobody there that's going to be willing to fit that bill for an extended training camp. You know, they used the Giants went away to play as part of their training camp, and I would say as part of that, they will have paid for their Brits to go, so that they, both sides get the quality out of that. But
well, let's put it in context. Let's put it in context, though, because the Giants were also travelling over to play a game against the Devils. The coaching staff of GB is the coaching staff of those two teams. So it was in Pete Russell and Adam Keefe's best interest to have their guys. They essentially put together a domestic-friendly preseason game as a warm-up for Olympic qualifying duty. That's not the way it should happen. Why is it happening that way? Why is the national body not pushing this and doing something to further the game for Team GB? Why is it left to two part-time coaches to sort that out? To me, it's a joke. Other sports have pushed this on. Look at cycling. Look at British cycling. 15 years ago, you wouldn't have known anyone who rode a bike and wore a Team GB jersey. Now, because of the lead-up that they did coming into London, they found the money, they found the exposure, they found the people, and they're producing massively. They're still producing 3 Olympics later. Why can't that be replicated with our game? Why are we determined to keep ice hockey as the best-kept secret?
But there's a massive difference there. The cycling, has a substantially smaller overhead than an ice rink, a team. If you're transporting, you want to do a friendly, that's 25 people. You have to get on a plane and fly them across the world, stick them in a hotel, have them.
Dave, you say that, but when you look at cycling, and I only know this because I'm passingly interested in the cycling, the bikes are 20 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand. The rent of a velodrome is not cheap. The travel is not cheap.
But the skills
I think there's a lot of comparison. I think there's a lot of comparison between the two sports.
But the huge fundamental difference is that you can't just walk outside and skate. You can't just buy a bike and start skating, or buy a bike and start. You can't just walk outside and start skating. You can buy a bike and build up to doing that. But you have the initial big breakthrough that builds up to being an ice hockey player.
Yeah.
Your gear, like my equipment that I have that I played one game in, was secondhand, and it still cost me £1,000. That was secondhand, So it's not a cheap sport to get into. It's not an easy sport with access, but that gets multiplied exponentially as you go up in the tiers. So as you get closer and closer to the GB bits, there's
talk about the accessibility. Look at the English system of getting kids into goalies. There's a goalie gear borrow system which is available, and that's not being done as anything part of the national team.
Yeah, that's a problem. But I totally agree with that. That's not the way it should be done. I
feel like we're arguing about something that we both agree about.
I know. Yeah. It's funny.
The main part of this is that you couldn't push the Olympics without funding. And you wouldn't get the funding without the Olympics. The two are mutually exclusive, so it's a chicken and egg. You can't have one without the other, but we can't get the Olympics because we don't have the money.
Yeah. Just a final point on this before we move on to the last story. I think you're right. I think John, you kind of said it there, and I think part of it, I think, is what I was trying to kind of get at, and kind of didn't really talk about or didn't mention as well as I should have. I think part of it is that the timing, and again, it comes back to what you were saying, Dave, in terms of the funding part. So it's kind of a mix of both. I do think that the training camp itself just wasn't long enough. There wasn't enough time. There wasn't enough time to kind of get that rink rust. It should have been an international team from one of the other groups. Yeah.
At least.
Or a team that didn't make that stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, the other group would have been easier to sell from a training point, because at least they're also wanting to get the ice time. Where if it was a team that didn't make it to that stage, they're probably going, well, I don't want to get involved this early. But it's as I said, chicken and egg. You can't. Someone has to write a check to get that to go, and there's currently nobody doing it. And without a big investor, that's where we're going to be.
Yep.
It's a bit like
guys. One last question.
The Southern Rink. It's another cracking example. There's they have a rink sitting, or the plans for a rink, plan and permission done, ready to go, but no one's paying for it. For the Southern Rink, for the Dublin Rink.
I've got one last question for you in the GB stuff, Marty. Sorry, before we move on, is coaching. Are we nearing the end of the current coaching regime as a result of a failure to reach the Olympics?
Yes.
I would say yes as well. Although my question then back to both of you would be who would be the natural successor to what is currently in place?
I personally think they should be that we should move to full-time staff, like we were mentioning, John. I think we should have somebody who's going to have time to get to know these boys across the Elite League and the National League. And someone needs to spend more time with these grassroots players before they get anywhere near the top stage.
Yep, here he is. Here's the man himself. He admits to himself that he's late to the party and he's trying to get in the spirits here. But yeah, qualifying was going to be uphill. It has to be about 2030 now. Talent identification, camp planning. I mean, that's everything everything that Dave, you and I argued, but we're actually agreeing about.
We're just so emotional about it, and it's just frustrating as such a big fan of the sport. But that's what we need.
I'm so invested in it. Let me go get my GB jersey.
What? Hold on.
Wait, do you actually have one? I'm sure he does, actually. Yeah, he does. Of course he does. Oh, he does.
Shane Johnson.
Ah, nice.
But anyway, I missed that. I don't know. Go and we'll look at the Giants one because I held the GB jersey up. But yeah, full-time staff is what the next thing is, and somebody who can go do, as we said, talent identification, spend time trying to find these people places to get more pro ice time. That's definitely the way to do it. So the next one is not so cheery, but I'll pass it over to Marty to have a chat about.
Yeah, the last story for this period is obviously probably the biggest story in the world of ice hockey this past week, and that was the tragic passing of Columbus Blue Jackets player Johnny Gaudreau. Him and his brother were killed in a crash last Thursday night in Salem County in New Jersey. The police confirmed the death was as a result of being hit by struck by a man driving a Jeep as they were cycling along one of the county routes 551 in one of the old townships in Salem County. Police arrived and unfortunately both Johnny and his brother Matthew were both killed. The family put out a statement that said, "Last night we lost two husbands, two fathers, two sons, two brothers, two sons and brothers-in-law, two nephews, two cousins, two family members, two teammates, two friends, but truly two amazing humans. We want to let everyone know we are receiving your messages of love and support, and we appreciate your continued thoughts and prayers. We ask for your continued respect and privacy during this very difficult period of grief from all of our families and the bottom of our hearts." Johnny's wife as well put out a tribute on Instagram, which was just completely heartbreaking. She put out a post that said, "Thank you for the best years of my life." She captioned the post along with the slideshow of family photos. "Despite losing you, I'm still the luckiest girl in the world to have been yours. I love you so much. You were perfect." He did have two children, Noah and Johnny. Guys, I mean, it was obviously the Columbus Blue Jackets as well put out their statement on the passing of Johnny. Their statement stated that shocked and devastated at the unimaginable tragedy. Johnny was not only a great hockey player, but more significantly, a loving husband, father, son, brother, and friend. We extend our heartfelt sympathies to his wife, Meredith, his children, Noah and Johnny, his parents, their family, and the friends. The sudden loss of Johnny and Matthew. Johnny played the game with great joy, which was felt by everyone that saw him on the ice. He brought a genuine love to hockey with him everywhere he played, from Boston College to Calgary Flames to Team USA to the Blue Jackets. He thrilled fans in a way only Johnny hockey could. The impact he had on our organization and our sport was profound, pales in comparison to the identical impression he made on everyone that he knew. Guys, I mean, in the off season for this tragic accident to happen, and such a a big figure, shall we say, to have lost his life in the way that he has. Obviously, it's a big shock that came in this in the off season and so early. And I suppose before the season gets underway, they're in the US. Your thoughts?
Just sad. It's sad that two brothers lost their lives as a result of a drunk driver. Made all the sadder when you understand why they were both together, because they were supposed to attend their sister's wedding the next day. The Johnny Hockey, as he was known, both guys part of the hockey family. The teams that he's played for throughout the National Hockey League and every other team have been very vocal in their shock and their feeling of loss. Let alone his Team USA records at the World Championship levels. He was the career points and assist record in men's World Championships. Just devastating, an absolutely devastating loss to hockey, but a more devastating loss to the Goodrow family.
Yep. Dave, you any thoughts on that before we move on?
Yeah, it's totally unimaginable, and my heart goes out to the family and his friends.
Yeah.
And on that, you have another piece?
So I was just going to just mention quickly, just obviously the tributes obviously have been, being paid and being left at the home rink there for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and also right around the different sporting venues across the US. Usual common thing of hockey sticks being left out with flowers. And I know I think it was the Cardiff was this past weekend as well. I think one of the here in the UK, I think was it Sheffield and Cardiff were playing in a was that am I right in saying at the past weekend? And I think there was a 1 minute silence at the start of that game, I think, or it was a tribute anyway at the start of that game. So fair play to those who have done something to honor the loss of Johnny. Sorry, Dave, you were saying?
Yeah, just on that somber note, I was thinking we'll just end period 2.
Yep. We'll stick on to period 3. He's muted his microphone.
Doing that on purpose now. 100% he's doing that on purpose.
100%.
No, I didn't. It's completely broken my flow there. My wife brought in the baby monitor because she's taken the dog for a walk. We've got my brother-in-law's dog here from today. She brought the monitor out. Someone may have heard a beep a few seconds ago, and it was the baby monitor disconnecting because it's just slightly too far away through the big thick walls here to get the picture. So I muted my mic and I forgot. So, period 3 is our general knocky news. Before we go any further, guys, I have an update on the Sheffield Steelers game, and I am absolutely heartbroken because the game is over with no further goals scored. It has ended. Freiburg got her on 4, the Sheffield Steelers 3. Welcome back to Europe, Sheffield.
And John, you're wondering why teams don't want to engage with you.
Do you know what? I'm only like this because they won't speak to us. The same way
lovely about
we're 100%. The same way that we're 100% not Glasgow Clan fans.
Yes. They were 100.
Anyway,
we've generally no reason to love Guildford, but that's a fantastic team and they're amazing.
Yep, fantastic media outlet, absolutely fantastic place, outstanding swimming pool.
Yep.
Fantastic
Best
hot
beer
dogs.
in the Elite League.
Best beer in the Elite League. The strangest view to enjoy a beer in the Elite League, I'll be honest, but still a fantastic location.
It's not even the strangest place to enjoy a beer in the Elite League. It's the strangest place to drink a beer, period. Like you shouldn't. Yeah. Nobody should be drinking a beer there.
It's the slow reveal curtains that get me. Like the whole curtains up and down from the bar to the I don't get it. It's like a really weird hockey peep show. Anyway, guys, we're gone slightly off target here. let's look at jerseys. Period 3 generally tends to be about jerseys, and I want to start with a couple of jerseys that weren't released in the last episode when we obviously looked at quite a lot of the new jerseys that have been put out. We're still waiting on a few. A couple of teams are still waiting to put theirs out. So we'll talk about them as we progress through the season. But the Glasgow Clan have released their regular season jerseys after having previously released their pre-season Warrior Hockey Tournament jersey things, whatever they were. So, home, road, and alternate jerseys. Guys, I dislike every single one of them.
What the alternate looks really gaudy. You know,
the color block grade does not work. Doesn't do any favors with that purple.
And they've done the same mistake that we talked about in the last one, where they sort of stretch the tartan over the shoulders. It just looks weird.
Yep.
And don't get me started about the white one. There's just nothing right about it.
Is that a paisley design on the white one?
It
It's
is. Yeah.
thistles.
Yeah.
It's thistles. Yeah.
Oh, it's thistles. All right. Okay. Move on. I don't like them. That home jersey, there's just something about that weird, like we talked about this last week about how, one team were able to get this kind of tartan feel and this carton kind of idea completely correct. Fife did it beautifully. And it just looks like they've tried to do the same thing here. Tartan kind of killed the idea again at the bottom, along the bottom. I think it looks like a tartany kind of design at the bottom of that one. And I mean, I just don't think it works. I just don't like the tone of the two colors. Just doesn't seem to work. It just doesn't work for me.
Anthony just called it perfectly. Somehow it's both busy and dull.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, perfect. That's exactly it. 100%. It is. It's busy and it just has no real character about it. And just that white one. That's that road jersey. It's just wow.
I wanna just bring up something quite interesting, Marty. You mentioned about we talked about how Fife have got it right. So through the week, I got a DM on X from Morag McDougall, famously the person who was responsible, and I believe is still responsible for the design of the uniforms in Fife. Obviously got in contact with her after last year when I believe I used the phrase God tier jersey about I think it was their cup jersey for 23-24. And interestingly, she sent me this about one thing in particular, and Dave, you're going to want to listen to this. So she said, "Hey, I just caught up with your podcast from a couple of weeks ago. Thought you guys might appreciate knowing that when designing Fife's jerseys, we saw Belfast's Rubber Warrior logo on their jersey last year and thought, that looks really cool. So I asked Warrior if we could have the same. It was our inspiration."
Hate that jersey now.
Fair play, Morag, for owning up to that one. But I've kept that one specifically for the podcast. I didn't share that with you guys before now because I thought you'd get a little tickle out of that, Dave. Anyway, so let's get rid of the dull stuff, Marty. Let's move on here. And let's look at some more graphic design disasters from Manchester. So, Manchester have released 4 jerseys for the season.
4?
These are their 2 home jerseys.
Oh.
What?
I'm assuming they're going to put sponsors on those.
No idea. I hope they do, because right now they're horrendous. That black background
looks like a training
looks like someone forgot to make the background of the image transparent.
Or they didn't dial up the gradient enough and they got the
It just I am really struggling with Manchester's jersey designs this season. Now, I did say in the last podcast when we looked at that like grayed out preseason jersey that they had that maybe the on ice ones would look better. No, they didn't. No, they did not.
No.
I do like the fact that they're going the logo, at least in the one with color, it's at least colorful. but the rest of the jerseys it looks like a training jersey to me. You know, it looks like what they would be wearing. Yeah, you know, that's line 1 and that's line 2. You know,
it just seems odd. It just seems like an odd choice to decide you're going to have 2 home jerseys. It just seems a bit like a weird choice.
So it's a home jersey and an alternate home. Now,
Okay,
keep those in your mind. Let's move on to the away and the cup jerseys.
Ooh.
Now, the away for me is the best out of the 4. I once again find myself leaning towards the away jerseys as being my favorite. I do quite like the cup one as well. No, it's the best of a bad bunch. It's the least bashed banana in a bunch of black bananas. Like that's what that is. I really hope someone DMs me about that description of a jersey, not just God tier jersey. The least bad of a bad bunch of bashed bananas. The blue I don't get, but I despise yellow and blue together. In that sort of with the purple, it's awful.
It's just there's a
the
lot
blues because that's a throwback, I think.
Yeah,
old jersey not blue.
I don't. There's something quite retro-y 90s about them or something. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I just don't. I'm not a big fan at all. Hopefully, as you say, maybe these will look better too. Maybe in person. I don't know. I've seen them in person. I mean,
well, if it goes the way that the preseason ones did, then absolutely not. They'll look even worse. It will be interesting. What I didn't consider, Dave, is the question you said is, are there sponsors still to go on those?
Yeah.
I would assume that there are, but I don't know. Sponsors could make or break them.
Where's the space for the sponsor, for the title sponsor? If they have one,
usually.
Yeah.
I can imagine either shoulders or in that purple band on the bottom.
Yeah.
Crotch sponsor.
The one thing I would say is if they are going that way with it, it's interesting to see brand identity or team identity overtaking sponsor, which is a direction I'd like to see more jerseys go. But I think
there's one thing that I was thinking about.
That looks like a graphic design student did that.
Yeah. When I seen Glasgow's, I was sort of thinking, where else could they have put Premier Sport? It was literally like on the chest, on the shoulders. It's like, just put a couple more on the sleeves. Why not?
Yeah. So there we go. That's the jerseys that have been released so far. Now there are 1 or 2 that are still to come. We have, I believe, Sheffield still haven't released their regular season jerseys, and we haven't seen. Now, I'm going to say this was a pinch of salt. I don't think we've seen anything out of Guildford yet. But again, nothing ever shocks me about the Guildford strips. They're pretty much the same season in and season out. Obviously, because of the way that they have to manage their uniforms to use the flaming G. So as more gets released, and as I'm sure we're probably only a couple of weeks away from the first of the themed jerseys, that'll be happening fairly soon. So here they come. They're coming for us. I've got one other story for Period 3, guys, and I love this. I shared this with you earlier in the week, and I think it's fantastic. Anyone who listens to us regularly will know that last year, one of our friends, Gav, he got the chance to step onto the ice for his first Elite League game. Now, Gav spends a lot of his time helping out the Giants in Belfast through training, attending sort of warm-ups and working with the team, essentially, giving them that extra netminder on the ice. The Fife Flyers were in dire straits last season, and they needed an e-bug. They needed an emergency backup goalie, and Gav got the call. Now, after that, we had him on the podcast here. He chatted about how that came about, the phone call that he got from Adam to ask him, and from Tom Coolan, asking him to come on and sit on the bench for the Flyers that night. And we had a chat to him. We asked him on the podcast, did you get the jersey? And he did say, no, I didn't get the jersey. But the Flyers did follow through. We got a little bit of traction online with that. And a few weeks later was Pride. Was EIHL Pride weekend. And Gav was sent through one of the Fife Flyers Pride jerseys, which was fantastic. And we thought, that was the last we'd hear about it. That is until listener of the show, Stephen Burrell, was down at the Flyers end of season sale. So they're getting rid of a pile of stuff. And he spots a jersey. He spots a number 30 jersey. Very specifically, a number 30 jersey that is not goalie cut and has had its sleeves cut for some interesting reason. It turns out that jersey is the jersey that Gav wore on the night in the SSE arena when he iced and was on the game sheet for the Fife Flyers. Stephen has picked up that jersey and will be making gift of it to Gav when the Flyers attend the SSE, I believe, towards the end of this season. I think he's heading over closer to Christmas, and he'll be handing that over to Gav. And I thought that's just very, very much worthwhile of a quick mention. And what got me with this was the fact that I threw a quick comment up, just sharing this story. And actually, it turns out Stephen learned about this through us. So we are very, very glad. Oh, I mean, we're so big, so big. Being completely honest, we're very, very glad to have been the very, very smallest part of this. Yeah. We're very, very lucky to have been able to highlight Gav's role on that night with the Flyers, and to see him collect this jersey. It's very unlikely that I'll be in Belfast when Stephen takes that jersey across to him. But I am sure that if one of us is there, it would be great to see Gav throw that jersey on again on the night when Steve hands it over to him. But fair play, Stephen. Well done. That's a fantastic gesture.
Yeah, amazing gesture. Great job. Yep. I think that is it for that content. We have one last part to do, as it is our first episode back just before the season starts. Shall we say? I'm trying to how do I word that? Yeah, that's fine. We'll go with that. Just before we get into the start of the season, we do have one thing that we always do at this time of the year, and that is our predictions. So we do have an overtime segment for this episode. So let me just run the overtime little video thing. Okay, as I said, our overtime is just going to focus on our annual predictions for this upcoming year. As we do every year, we sit down and we surmise and we put down our names, our team names of who we think will win everything, Challenge Cup, League, and Playoff trophy. Now, there is clearly a thing we always have to state at the start of the predictions every single time. We are, without a doubt, Belfast Giants fans. We are not behind the door about that. We are proud Belfast Giants fans. The one thing we always say when it comes to Breeze predictions is the Belfast Giants are going to win it all. And this year, more so, we believe, than any other year. The one thing we then will say about our predictions is we have to pick a team that if the Belfast Giants are not the winning team, who will be the team is likely to lift each of those trophies, if that makes sense. So, John, let's start with you. Let's go with the Challenge Cup first. Who do you have taking the Challenge Cup?
Ooh, Challenge Cup. That's an interesting one. It's been really interesting, actually, looking sort of up and down the league. The last couple of weeks, just us chatting. Obviously, last podcast, we talked about the rosters and kind of how the teams were shaping up. And then as we've seen some preseason games sort of kick in, it's been really interesting to see those teams. I think traditionally, I kind of always do this, especially when it comes to the short form competitions like the cup. Well, short form for the cup, it's going to be decided in March. What an absolute disaster. I always think the smaller clubs, it's their best opportunity for trophies. I still stick by that. Now, yes, the last 2 years we've seen two teams completely dominate. That's been unusual. Let's be honest. 2 Grand Slams in 2 years is incredibly unusual. I'm going to stick to my guns on this one. And I'm going to stick to the guns that I've had for the last few years. I'm calling it now. when those Kazakhs really start firing, the Fife Flyers are going to be a force when it comes to short form competitions. The Fife Flyers are winning the Challenge Cup.
Okay. 5. Dave, same question to you. Challenge Cup, who do you have taken that?
Yeah, I do agree that the short form does favor non-traditional teams, and I think and they've been on the cusp for so many years. I do think Guildford Flames will be the big one this year, and I think that format will suit them. And they're in with the shout, and I think that they would be well deserved.
Okay. My choice for the Challenge Cup, I think I've been looking and I was thinking about who I think would probably need that Challenge Cup. Even it's not a consolation prize, that's the wrong thing to say, but it's a cup that it's always played for. People always want to play for it, and people really want to win it. At the end of the day, it is a trophy. But if there's a team that needs to if there's a team that definitely needs to pick up a trophy of some description by the end of this year, it's the Cardiff Devils. And I have my my money on the Cardiff Devils for the Challenge Cup this year. And that's my take on that. Did I just see? Oh no, I think John, you were asking. I think it was our group chat. You're asking Aaron to get his. We'll come back to that. Okay. Same question. Then again, we'll go to the next one. The league this year. We'll do the order of when you lift the trophies. The league is the next one up for grabs. Again, Belfast Giants are picking up the league. They're picking up the league as well this year. So but if it's not the Belfast Giants, who do you have taken the league title this year? Is there anybody that can see past Sheffield after what they did last year? Dave, let's go with you first. Who have you got for the league for 2024-2025?
I think you hit the nail on the head. If it's not the Giants, it's Sheffield again this year. I think that they've not changed enough to not be as strong as they were last year, and the rest of the league, in my opinion, hasn't improved enough to beat them, other than the Giants.
That's a good point. Yep, fair enough. John, any difference there?
No, you both absolutely hit the nail on the head. There's been incremental increases in sort of performance and expectation in every team in the league. Every team has increased firepower. All joking aside, a 4-3 loss in the CHL is still pretty acceptable. Let's be totally honest.
Away as well, it's
away as well. First real competitive game of the season for them. They will be threatening. I'm gonna have to stick the same. I'm gonna have to say Sheffield for the league. If it's not the Giants, which it will be.
Yep, exactly, 100%. And I agree with both of you. I already said there, I can't see past Sheffield, as you said, John or Davey. I think it was a really good point. I don't think other teams have made as much. I don't think they've made enough changes this year to kind of reach that level of what Sheffield is, and Sheffield obviously bringing in that strong core, kind of continuing with that form possibility. We'll obviously see as the season goes on. Lastly, then, the last trophy up for grabs will be the playoff trophy at the end of the season. And again, if it's not Belfast, who do you have? John, let's go with you first.
Oh, I'm glad you came to me first. Nottingham. I think I like Nottingham for playoffs. Without going into it, without dragging things up, we've seen press this week. Again, let's not go into it. That team went through a lot last season. I will be willing that team to make the Final Four. If they make the Final Four, I think there's a solid team in there. If they make it to the Final Four with that fan base behind them for 2 games for a trophy, they walk away with it. I don't care what the strength of the other teams are that they come against. I don't care if they have to go through Sheffield, because let's be honest, if Belfast make it, they'll win it. But I'm just saying, I don't care. I don't care what team they have to go through to get that trophy. I see them lift it, and I'm going for the Nottingham Panthers for playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Dave.
I'm going to go for Cardiff. Purely based on the law of probabilities. They're always thereabouts when it comes to that tail end of the season, even when they weren't the league challengers. They were always thereabouts in the playoff finals, and they haven't lifted it in a while. So I think that there's a solid chance that team has been on the cusp of winning big for a long time. After winning the couple of leagues they did, they've always been thereabouts. And I think in that shorter format, as John said, comes down to the 2 games. I think that they might actually do well.
Yeah, I'm actually devastated that I didn't go first in this case, John, because I had Nottingham down as my choice as well for the playoffs this year. I think it's exactly as you said, echoing exactly what you said. I think it's given what happened last year, not to dwell on that, but I think for the fans around the league, I think if we got to the playoff final weekend and they got there, I think John, it's not just even the noise from the Nottingham fans. I think there'll be other fans around the league. I know I hate it whenever other fans do this, but I think there'll be other fans from around the league who will be willing Nottingham on in some ways. And people will say, but it's not the same team as was last year, and we've it's a different team and it's different. It's still something that the fans in Nottingham will be thinking about this year. Still same fan base, and it's something that the fan base need as well. It's
going to live in the unconscious memory of the Nottingham Panthers for years, for decades, and I think it would be something that the team will need to overcome. And I think getting things like a trophy and will not change anything, but it'll put a smile back on the fans' faces, because they'll be dwelling on that for years. So.
Yep. 100%. All right. I don't think we got any word back from Aaron, unfortunately, before the end of the episode. But we will.
I think he had a bad day at work today, and from the looks of it, he has gone straight to bed.
We'll throw those up, sure, if he does send them through. We'll put them in, or in the next episode when he's on 2 weeks' time. Hopefully, he joins us and he can take us through them himself. With that is the end of our episode for this week. As usual, you can check us out on all of the social media channels, on Facebook, on X. We're on TikTok, obviously, as we talked about earlier on, at Door 14 Hockey. Check out the video version of this podcast if you're listening to it in the standard way. You can check it out on YouTube at Door 14 Hockey as well. Check out this episode, all the previous episodes on our website at door14hockey.com. And as we always say, if you are listening to this on your podcast provider of choice, don't forget to give us a subscribe or a review or whatever it might be, stars, whatever it is in your podcast provider of choice. It really does help us just kind of get out there and for people to see our podcast, and we always do appreciate that. So thank you very much for those who've already done that. Yes.
Just because the Steelers let me down today, I'm just going to do this one more time just to annoy you.
We'll be removing that sound effect from the sound after tonight's show. Guys, that is for this week. It is all left to do then for us this week is to sign off. I'm Marty.
I'm Dave.
I'm John.
Have a great week. Wrong button.
I'm so going to download